You are now live.
We are now live. I see that. Okay.
Hey, Terry.
I'm
Hi.
going to call the meeting. Hey, Terry. I'm going to call
Hello.
the meeting to order. Meeting of the Affordable Housing and Community Economic Development Commission is now started. And I'm going to call the roll. Karen Britton,
Here.
Rich Halverson,
Here.
Rich,
I'm here. Hello?
muted. He's here. Okay. Sheridan,
Here.
Terry Bond.
Here.
Okay. Hi, Rich. Hi, Pat. And Terry Bond. Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the January meeting minutes. Doesn't seem like, I guess
It would have been the last meeting minutes.
that was the last time we talked
Yes,
at,
and
an actual.
you're supposed to
meeting.
really look good at that
Um,
agenda when I send you
minutes
the
from
draft.
January.
We
I hear
do,
motion?
It was me. Probably it was me. I
Nobody's
usually
moving
start
to
it
it?
and then I send it off for somebody to look at, so,
Now I can't hear anything.
oh dear.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out anyway, Nancy.
Yeah, the last time we had a meeting, which was apparently in January, we've had various and sundry other meetings where we've been places and
Yeah,
Maybe you should do by phone, like last time. Didn't you do by
talked
phone? It
about
worked better.
things, but
yeah, it started out pretty good, but now you're frozen,
Freezing
so,
up.
yeah, you might have to just go ahead and do the phone like you did last
Oh.
time. Or, like I said, we'll see if we,
am I fading out again?
yep,
Uh, Can you hear me now?
yep.
Okay. Is there a motion then? Did we get a motion?
I'll move. I'll make the
to
motion
approve
to accept the minutes. Mhm.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a second?
Yes.
The meeting minutes from January have been moved to accept them and a second has been requested. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All those opposed? The meeting minutes from January have been approved. Okay. The next item, which is probably the real reason we have this meeting tonight, is to talk about the demise of our workforce housing legislation.
That's the word.
4022. Demise, yes, demise.
I like that word.
In flame. The
Yeah,
demise,
it's true.
yes, in flames. I don't know how many of you watched the actual death occur. Watched some of it, but I couldn't take it, so I stopped watching. It was not a pretty picture. I still have not gotten answers to questions that I had about how it is that legally a resolution such as the one that was passed trumps, no pun intended of any kind, trumps the actual statute. But nonetheless, that's what's happened. And I understand that the law office told the council that they actually had to vote on the legislation and kill it in order for the in order for us to proceed and for the city to proceed, and that was the only way that the resolution would then be in force. So they actually had to take that vote on the legislation to kill it, which they have
But-
now done.
Can I ask a
And
question?
we got our 4 votes. Terry,
I just want to clarify what you're saying, that the law office said that after they passed the resolution, the council then had to disapprove the legislation to be in line with the resolution? Is that what they said?
yeah, I'm assuming you asked, that you said, it's my understanding that the law office said
Oh, Nancy, it's really, yeah, it's really hard,
After
Nancy. Yeah.
the,
Okay. We
after
can't
the
really hear
resolution
you.
was out-
Nancy, I think you need to go to your phone.
Yeah, we can't really hear you.
Mhm.
In fact, now you're frozen.
resolution was
Zoom?
passed, that then the council that was before them, the ordinance. And so that's what they did, told the council. And so they defeated it. Is that your understanding, right, Teresa?
No, because we couldn't hear a thing you said. We didn't hear a thing you said. So
I can't hear
You're
you.
you need to get on your phone.
Okay. So here we are, we have no statute. The question is, what do we do now? And there is some discussion about, I'm frozen, okay.
Yeah,
can-
can we
I
send
can
her a
see
message so
myself.
she understands?
Karen, you're in the car, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we missed everything you said. So everybody was saying you
I
probably
can't
need to
hear
get on your
anybody.
phone.
This is
I wonder if
ridiculous.
Teresa can answer that question. Teresa, can you answer the question?
I'm gonna leave and come back.
Hold on, it's Alderman Gay.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Hi, Alderman Gay.
Hey, Teresa,
Hey.
leave.
I am going to be late because of the citation thing for this thing at the graduate, but I'll be.
And come back. And
So
see if
Alderman
we're-
Gay is going to be late.
Maybe-
He's at an event, a graduation event,
I'm gonna stop the
but
video
he'll
and
be
see if I
coming.
can-
So he'll be
See if I can hear people.
joining us.
Okay.
So is Nancy on her phone now?
She's switching over to it. That's
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So what was the
the question was, from what I understood she was saying, is that after passing the resolution, that meant they had to kill the affordable housing legislation. They had to disapprove that because they passed the resolution. Is that what she was saying?
I didn't get that, but maybe Eric can help. Was that what happened? I
That's
didn't.
what I got.
That's what you got, Karen?
Yeah, I think that's what she was saying.
No,
And that's
no,
what-
I mean, I don't know if that's what happened.
I didn't have the
I-
I didn't have the ability to watch it either. So I think that is likely what happened. I mean, it's also these things, they're on a clock, you know. I mean, they can't just be out there forever. And I think there may have been some, I'm not sure if it was tied to the resolution or just the fact that the ordinance had been in city council for a fairly long time, and that may have
Yeah.
had something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think
Well-
I think it went past the 90-day time.
Yeah, it definitely did.
I think the 90 days was sometime, was like the end of April.
Mhm.
That's what Dewan had said, I'm pretty sure. So we knew something had to happen before that.
Right.
So I
You
guess
know,
that
it-
Well, it's sort of all moot.
yeah.
Yeah, I
no,
mean,
point.
there's a practical level of business here too, where, I mean, at some point, I know that council members will, do some things on principle, but I mean, if something it doesn't have the votes, and nothing is going to change that. But I think that the resolution probably expedited that process for sure.
Right.
Can somebody
Right.
please remind me what the resolution was?
The
Well,
resolution,
I could speak to that because it was
okay,
Thank you.
yeah. So it was called R-1-23. So it was the first resolution that was issued this year, and it was actually more about the comprehensive plan process that we do every 10 years, which is something I am leading right now. We're winding down in our development of a draft comprehensive plan. And it came, the logic in the resolution, I think, was that there was a contention that we shouldn't be doing any changes to our zoning code, even if they're text changes, which is essentially what the 04022 was. It's not really changing the boundaries of zoning districts. It's just changing a requirement in the zoning. It's creating a new use. That's what we were doing. But even there was the contention was that even something like that should not be adopted until the comprehensive plan is adopted. And I think many of us who are supporting the need for more housing options, housing affordability, we're kind of pointing to the 2009 comp plan as providing quite a bit of emphasis on the need already then, and that we didn't need the next comprehensive plan to reinforce that need. But that was essentially the disagreement, that there was a majority of the city council kind of felt that they were more comfortable seeing the recommendations in the current comp plan that we're working on right now that are going to certainly reinforce everything that 040 was trying to do, and they wanted to basically punt on the issue. I mean, it's not, that's a blunt way of saying it, but yeah.
Well, Eric, there was no need for the resolution. All the studying had been done. It was really just to put it off.
Right.
I mean, I know your staff and you can't say it, and punting is right, but it
Yeah,
makes
I'm trying to be a little diplomatic here, but that's a sense. It was a mechanism.
On the commission, I'm sorry, we don't have to be diplomatic, because if it's a good thing that our vice chair isn't here, because he'd be saying what he felt after all the work we did on the study, and we come down the road and it's like, no, we can't do that because we got another general plan going on. I mean, it really was not, it was not a good policy. I'll just put it that way. So.
Yeah, Terry, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Eric, you were very diplomatic about the way you put that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
very good staff.
You do see the mechanism for delaying important legislation. It's unfortunate,
Right.
but
Notwithstanding all the study
so-
that we had done, all the work that had gone into it, all the supporting documentation that we had, it didn't mean anything because 5 members of the council did not want to vote for it at this time.
right.
Nor did
right.
they want to entertain the amendments that we would have put into the legislation, including the ones that I suggested at the very end, which both Dewan and Brooks thought would be really helpful additions. So that's.
But let me also
where
say
we are
what
right
was
now.
so Nancy and everybody, what was most distressing to me is there wasn't even a discussion. There wasn't even any open discussion or about the amendment, about the bill and everything else. It was done behind closed doors. I'm sorry. Older people met and talked and didn't always have the facts. So that's what's distressing, is I just think that wasn't the way to honor the process and leadership in the city. I mean, it should have been done. Even if they were going to deny it, they should have gone on record and explained in
what
person
objections they had,
what the issues were and what they could do to maybe go, because they all said they wanted affordable workforce housing. So what do you need to make it happen? That's my issue. And I'm sorry, I'll be quiet. Maybe.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
No, you won't.
Can you talk for me? I've had enough.
It seems to me right now where we are is we have a couple of different options. One, we could reintroduce a variety of the legislation. We could have Dewan reintroduce the legislation in a different form. And I don't know whether using the existing legislation plus all the amendments would be considered a different form. We have to obviously check that with the law office, but that's one option. And that may be where we want to go at some point. How quickly, I don't know. Then a second option, which Teresa and I have talked about a little bit, is to take sections of the legislation as it was written and try to put those into a statute, such as the one thing we talked about was there was a section about there was a section in the legislation about reducing fees for connecting to the utilities for workforce housing projects that would qualify as workforce housing. There are a lot of, it is quite as simple as that, because we'd have to do a number of things in the legislation in order to make that a bill. But so that's another option. I don't know if there are other sections in the bill as it currently exists that would also advance workforce housing and affordable housing that could be pulled out and included in a separate bill. So that's another item. I was thinking, as Teresa and I were talking about it, that there's kind of a beauty to that one, because it sort of would make aldermen, and I don't know if any of the aldermen have joined us, but it would make the council go on record about whether they really do want to advance affordable housing. If the legislation doesn't talk anything about zoning changes at all, but it does say for projects that are affordable housing and workforce housing, and we'd have to define those two terms, that there would be a 50% reduction in connection fees.
I rather like that one, because I think that, the first option is going to suffer the same fate that workforce bill did.
Yeah, I think that's true at this
Gonna
point.
refer it back and say we got to do a comprehensive plan before we can do it. But like you said, if you just have some specific, boosts for workforce housing or affordable housing, such as, fee reduction, then like you said, it's a technical correction to a statute as opposed to a major change that, really
Right.
zoning and everything else.
Mhm.
Well, it is and it isn't. And the reason I'm saying it isn't is one of the things that we'd have to do is we'd have to come up with a definition.
Right. Well, that's
And
not
we'd
as
have to
hard.
figure out where that definition would go in the code. So that's gonna be a little tricky.
Well, maybe we wouldn't. I mean, if you do standalone legislation where you're not amending anything,
But you have to
just
define, you would have to define it.
you have to
before-
define your terms, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to amend the code with a new definition of housing. I mean, I think we'd have to talk
No,
to the
there's-
law
there-
office about that.
Yeah, but
I-
we would have to come up with what we
Right, and
think.
I don't think that's that difficult, but, I mean, right now, as you and I have talked about, the definitional difference between the two is the upper income limit. Affordable housing is serving those 80% and below, and workforce housing is 100% and below. So
Above.
100% and below.
Well, okay, well, I always think of workforce housing as being between 80 and 120%.
Oh, 100, is it 120? I don't remember what we put in the legislation, but I have it here, but I haven't looked at
Yeah.
it lately. But whatever,
mean-
whatever is the definition, that's not so difficult. And we'd have to ask the law office, but I do think that if we just had a standalone bill And we
But-
ask that and we define this standalone bill as a bill that the purpose of which is to encourage the development of affordable and workforce housing
Mhm.
in the city of Annapolis. That would be sufficient. And then we define our terms and we do at least the connection fee reduction. And then I don't know, are there any other things that we can think of that were in that legislation that we could do?
No, because everything else relates to zoning.
Okay, all right.
But
think
I
you're right.
mean,
I
everything
don't, I
else
don't, I
relates
don't
to zoning.
remember that there's anything else either, so.
Yeah. I went back and I thought about it for a while this afternoon, and I thought about the money and how much money are we talking about?
How much money
And,
were we well,
It was very hard to find out what the city's connection fees were. And because I was trying to compare them to the county. And the reason I wanted to compare them to the county was I wanted to make sure that what we came up with was a real substantial reduction and not, not a substantial reduction. So I went and I looked up the counties, and the counties are about capital connection charges are about $10,000 for each water and sewer. And then I looked up ours, and I finally found ours, and our capital connection charges are half of that. Our capital connection charges are only $6,500. But that doesn't include the tap fee. So when you add the tap fee on there, now they're about $24,000 for both.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if the county, if you had the counties together, they're $20,000. I don't know if that includes their tap fee. So I've got to call into the county to find out because that makes a difference. I mean, our tap fee for water and sewer is like $17,000, and our capital connection charge is only $6,000 or $6,500. So depending on what we decided and what we want to look at, we might want to recommend, if we're just going to look at the capital connection, then we might want to look at the whole fee,
the
whole
tap fee as well as the connection
$6,500.
cost.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not look at the, so, I mean, those are the kind of things that we really need to, really need to think about. And hopefully I'll have an answer tomorrow about the county's fees and whether they include the tap fee. Does everybody
Okay.
understand what I'm talking about in terms of the difference?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
I got to run into that D30 meeting. So I will, if somebody could catch me up later, that would be awesome, please. Or I'll reach out.
Okay. So.
All right. Solve everything. Let me know everything's fixed when I get back.
Okay.
You're just going to be a spokesperson for the commission, right? Advocating for it, because we don't want to get into all the intricacies of the workforce housing bill, I don't think.
No,
Just
I don't even
kind
know
of
what
be
I'm
an
doing here,
advocate for the commission.
yes. Okay. I will. All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Alrighty. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Karen.
Bye.
So yeah, we should define that and see what else is there. If we just want to talk about connection fees, or whether we want to talk about connection and tap fees, and if there's anything else that we want to, because we may want to be explicit about what those connection fees are and sort of itemize them and consider the tap fee as another type of connection fee.
So,
Right,
that
like some places mush them all together and some separate them out.
Right.
so if we do this, we still need, what, 5 votes, right?
Right, which is why I look at it as put up or shut up, which is if you really want to advance affordable housing, let's do something that does that.
But can't we have I hate to go back and again and then get defeated again. I mean, I generally don't know. I'm sorry, guys. Does it serve a purpose to put all this effort into something and have it defeated again if we can't get the 5 votes?
Well, that is something, that's the temperature that I think our council member who would have, whichever one it is, would have to measure. They'd have to say, okay, here's what we would like to do. And do we think we can do it? Do we think we can get the votes? I don't think that's our decision to make, but
No,
you're
so they-
right.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, and
We've got to get a council member interested in doing it too.
Right.
But I
well,
think,
yeah, you have to have a sponsor for the legislation.
right. Have you talked to Dewan about it?
I had,
You
and
had, okay.
he seemed, he was supportive.
Okay.
I'm just sort of disappointed that they're not here. And
Right.
so I wouldn't, unless we get a sense of them, I wouldn't even.
No,
move
I
forward.
agree. I think that's right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I would just leave it to them to determine if they think they could get the votes, and
Right.
just be clear that, you don't want to spin your wheels if they don't want you probably to spin your wheels either. If they can't. So, I mean, I think they can talk about if I think what might be helpful is for the commission to just sort of spell out the interest. Like, these are the items that would be in the potential legislation, or maybe provide some talking points that they can use to convey to other council members what the
Right.
idea is without actually reading the legislation, but
And again, I think
Yeah.
we need to talk about who this, what types of housing this is gonna apply to, and what fees are gonna, which ones we're looking at. We need to have a discussion about that. I mean, when you do the math on a 58 unit project, if they forgave the 6,500 in capital connection charges and just that, that total would be about $377,000. And then if you have that, it would only be $100 and some thousand. So is that meaningful, to a developer?
Yes.
I'm kind of looking at Patrick because he's done that. I mean, is that like enough money to make it worthwhile or an
I
incentive?
think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough.
No, I mean, if
That's-
you took
that's
a
good
look at-
incentive, Teresa,
I'm sorry.
that's a good incentive.
Okay, alrighty, because if you start looking at CNI, and you do it before CNI starts under construction, now you're talking in the millions. You're talking at least, $1 million on that would be saved. So, even if you just did 50%. Maybe a couple million if you did more than 50%. I mean, if you did the whole 6,500.
And then,
So-
of course, the negativity that's going to come from that is that's lost revenue to the city, and developers are making a.
Well, they always, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and
Yeah.
they don't get, this is supposed to be an incentive.
Yeah.
I know. I guess we just need to be
When
ready.
there's an incentive, that means you're giving something away.
Right, Teresa. We need to be ready for that, so we don't get blindsided. That's all.
Right. No, but that's, my point is,
Oh, I totally agree. I get it, but others don't. That's the problem, and so.
So
Well,
we're talking about basically the same amendment then that we had proposed, that what it says is charges for issuance of permits, there's some of the connection charge, capital facility charge, capital facility assessment charge, and an installation charge. And recommendation is that be 50%.
so now if you're including the installation charge, now we're talking about $24,000
Yeah,
in savings. And if you multiply that times, 50, et cetera, so you're talking, if you're going to include the installation thing, yeah. So where did you get that from? Was that the, Pat, I don't remember that.
This
Was
is,
that one fun?
Yeah, this is the November 11th, 2022
Draft, yeah.
Okay, I'll
ordinance.
have to look at that.
Yeah, and it's also got the definition of workforce at 120. That's where it changed it from
Right.
100.
Right. Right. Now, one of the things that Jackie said is, to me this morning was, besides the definition of workforce housing, one of the things that we're gonna have to figure out is, and the other ones I looked at had this thing where it's tied to the property. You know, like there's a covenant to the property or something, like with MPDU.
Well, that would be,
But that's not in the legislation. That would be in the implementation of it. Although we could put in a requirement. That
No, you have to
yeah,
put that in the legislation.
there could be a piece in the legislation that says the
Right.
requires a commitment from the developer to do what he says he's going to do.
Right, right.
so would we be
For that
doing it
for that
strictly
reduced-
by family too, rather than home ownership?
Pardon?
Said the bill was for home ownership and multifamily.
Right.
Right.
We're proposing this fee change. Would we limit it just to multifamily to make it a little bit cleaner?
We could, because we don't really have homeowner. The only homeowner construction that we ever have is Habitat.
Well, but the idea is for the future, there may be more. There may be more people doing duplexes or you know, quad or whatever.
But we can always add on.
That doesn't, I think we should do, I think it should be as broad as possible to start with. Especially since the quote loss of income to the city comes from the multifamily, not really from the single family. In terms of numbers.
Yeah.
Well, let's just play with it at this point and see if we can Teresa, if you could get us or Eric, I don't know who could do this. If you could get us sort of an outline of when we say the words connection fees or whatever else it says, what that really means. What are we talking about?
You know, actually, while we're on, I could share, I did look it up as well, because I don't deal with this stuff in my day-to-day work either, but I can show you all where this is listed in our city code, so you can see. 'Cause
Okay.
it, you know, Teresa's point, I mean, it is pretty significant charges, and it's not just, you know, the mainline connection to a building, but for every unit you're paying a capital
And hookup.
fee as well. So if you Google, you know, Annapolis Code of Ordinances, it takes you to our code book, and if you go to the very end, you could just type in capital facility fees in the search box, and that'll show you where in our plumbing code is where it comes up. So under Title
see it here.
17, buildings and construction, that's where, I'm showing you right now the fee schedule that's in the appendices of the code book.
Right.
And I scrolled down to this section 17.28.090. That's in our chapter 17, which deals with building and construction. And that's where it's talked about in terms of what's required. But generally, fees aren't referenced in the chapters. They're referenced, I mean, the actual fees are listed in this appendices. And so it's a really long list of fees, but they're all organized by the code section that they refer to, and which is in chronological order. And so you can see for this, the connection charge, you know, for sewer, $9,400, for your drinking water, $8,400. And then, you know, per unit, you have $1,600 for sewer, water is $4,900 per
49.
unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are kind of the primary fees. I mean, there's some other stuff that's less, just there's inspection type fees, I think, but those are the big ones. I think these here.
Well, I think it's the big ones that we want to include. We don't
yeah,
want
yeah,
an
like
ending list of charges that we.
And that's
of
what
fees that
adds
we're
up to the $24,300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, there's permit fees, just generally speaking, for application, when you apply to get a permit, and those are more expensive the more value your project is estimated to cost. That's kind of how they do the permit fees for just your
Mhm.
general building permit, et cetera. Those are definitely worth something, but I think it's these these plumbing hookups that are really kind of the big ones. We can ask, we can ask John Manassa. He's our chief of permits and inspections. I mean, he would also be probably a good resource for like, this is how it breaks down for a typical project. Maybe there's some chart that he has.
Pat, have you ever had in your experience in development any communities that have either forgiven or reduced any capital connection?
Yeah. It's not uncommon.
Do you have any ones that you know of off the top of your head?
It's been a while since I was kind of at that level, but I mean, I could remember negotiating pilots, and part of that would be, sometimes the connection charges too. But, as we were saying, if you were doing a 48 unit project, something like the Willows, maybe, half the cost of this would be $500,000, $500,000. So that's significant.
It's very significant. Yeah.
Yeah, if you did the whole $24,000, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you had 48 units, half of that would be 500,000. So.
So it's definitely an incentive to try to get.
Yeah.
And again, it all goes back to, does the city really, what kind of incentives does the city want to
Do
offer?
they want to offer? Right. Exactly. So, well, I think that
tend to. I was just going to say, I don't want to turn the conversation, but I do want to say that I think, and maybe Pat can confirm this, but I tend to think that these kinds of incentives really help the people who are already committed to building affordable housing, like the developers who are, like it might make it, but they're not necessarily gonna, somebody who is looking to do market rate stuff, it's not necessarily gonna turn their scenario to do, workforce housing, right? I mean, it's a small tool for people, I mean, it's worthwhile, but I've been thinking about other things, like the big thing in my mind that is ultimately, density, and it's ways of structuring that might be more palatable. Not something I would want to get into yet, but I think that ultimately, if you're trying to convince, Teresa and I had a conversation with a potential developer recently. He's trying to make a project work, and I mean, it really comes down to like reducing the allowable size of the units to accommodate more units on the site, and I think about the sort of conversation that had the sort of rhetoric that sort of came out around the 04022 legislation. And it was all about this fear of oversized developments, et cetera. And I think there's probably a better way to structure the legislation that would mitigate some of that, even if it's misguided, that the concerns were overblown in some cases. I think there's a way of mitigating that just simply by changing the unit size that's allowable, which for most of our residential districts, it's 1,700 square feet is like the minimum unit size for a lot of multifamily. It's
Yeah, and
hard to
mine-
believe.
Yeah, because mine's not that big
It would be
where I
significant.
live.
And we were looking at a project the other day where they were putting in 500 to 700 square foot apartments. They were like 1-bedroom apartments, and that was like totally reasonable, for an urban area, but the zoning didn't come anywhere close to that.
Wow.
And
Well,
it's not that those aren't allowed. You could do a 500 square foot apartment, but the way you calculate the number of units that you can build is based on the 1,700 square foot. So you basically take, you're building your lot, you divide it by 1,700, and that's how many units you could put in. And you could certainly make it smaller. That's your prerogative at that point, but you can't go more than the number of 1,700 square foot units that can fit. And so, that's I think that's kind of like where things should go in a way. There's certainly going to be issues on some people's minds with that, but the other aspect is just being very clear from the get-go about height limits, and that was something that was, I think, fairly overblown, but that's a major concern in this town. And I've been kind of informally, when the legislation comes up in conversation, I've actually said, I do wonder what would have happened if, there was simply an amendment to like limit the height, and just say, you could be that R4 zoning, but you can't go over 3 stories or something. It's discouraging that conversation didn't happen, that we didn't have that discussion, that there were so many things that could have been introduced to change the to improve the legislation and to bring some people on board. And there was no appetite to do that. But I think my point is, I think there's a lot of things that could be done to make this more palatable,
Right.
Can I ask a question, Eric? Where's the comprehensive plan because I know you've been working on it. Do you have an end date? Completion?
Yeah, it should be the end of this year. We're rolling out a draft of the plan. We're basically that resolution. It basically put an end of May deadline to kind of have the draft done, and so then we have there's a pretty long review period though. So there's like a 60-day state mandated public review period that is kind of coordinated by our planning commission and our department. And then after that review period, the planning commission, puts together findings, kind of a recommendation to the city council that lists out all the recommendations and then just delivers it to city council. And then that would start their adoption process. And
what I'm wondering is if some of this conversation we're having now about workforce housing, affordable housing, simple things that could encourage it that you've been talking about here, if somehow that can make its way into a draft of the comp plan, some area of the comp plan.
They are. No, we absolutely.
Really clarity so that we can point to that, because maybe we can do a new bill the end of the year that encompasses that, because that's kind of what you're talking about, Nancy. They said you put the comp plan is going to have that information. Then we can maybe move forward because we can have those conversations in other places, which we couldn't have during the process of this legislation. That's
right.
missed in me.
Right. Yeah. No, I guess the unfortunate thing that a lot of these ideas are definitely going to be in the comprehensive plan. I wish we could sort of get a head start on things, because
We tried, Eric.
you kind of know. I mean, that's, I'm a planner. I feel passionately about planning, but there's a lot that we already know that we don't need a plan to tell us what to do, you know. And I've been trying to be clear with, clarify with city council that, you know, the comp plan isn't going to write the legislation, you know, it's going to be me a little more clear about what the priorities are and some strategies, but we still need people to write legislation. And that was kind of one of the unfortunate, I was trying to clarify with that resolution. I just didn't want people to think, it seemed like there was this narrative that was being pushed that the comp plan was, you know, going to essentially build consensus around these housing issues and essentially write the legislation for us. And that's not really the case. So,
Well,
I mean, basically what you're talking about.
perhaps you can, over the course of the next month or so, write down some of those ideas for limitations that you thought maybe had we had the opportunity to talk about, we would have known what they were, just so we have them in our back pocket as we later decide to develop another piece of legislation. You know, the things like the height limitation and maybe how we could approach the whole issue of square footage and density.
I'm going to probably I'm going to send you the housing chapter, the land use chapter and the housing chapter when I'm comfortable with those.
Okay. All right.
You can see what exactly is in the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe we should just wait until next year. I mean, that's basically when we'd be introducing legislation and not do anything.
Probably. I mean, that's a
So
possibility.
forget about the fee thing
there
and just put it all in one, like, you know.
Maybe.
I mean, I can't see the only possibility of doing it earlier. The only projects that it would affect would be, I don't think at this point it would affect the Willows. I'm not sure.
That's pretty well
now that
cooked.
they find
Yeah,
planning
that's cooked.
commission
And conifers, that's not going anywhere. I mean, they don't have the zoning.
but
So
they're going to be asking for an exception or whatever. I don't know what the term is, but the conifer one is the one off Admiral Drive, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. It doesn't have the alderman support.
Oh, it doesn't?
No,
Okay.
No.
because it doesn't have the community support. So
Ah, well,
from what I,
that's what's her name? Yeah. Okay.
Arma.
yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just hold off on this until, you know, we could start working on it and cleaning it up and, you know, little by little, so that by the time it's ready next year to go, it's in really good shape.
I think that's a lovely idea. I do have a question about how much help we get from the Office of Law, because they weren't very helpful to this effort. And I just wonder how that can change. Can it change?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. We should request a in-person meeting at some point.
With the law office.
Yeah,
See what
I think we
how we
should.
can work better together.
Right. Why are you
Yeah.
laughing, Eric? Eric's laughing.
Well, you know,
Eric does it a lot better than I do on. He's more
I was-
optimistic.
yeah, I was just trying to imagine what we could do differently aside from, you know, somebody has to take the first stab at writing legislation. And, you know, I think things kind of got off when we sent the draft, and we had a very new legislative analyst who has
Oh,
been here longer now, and I think I'm always optimistic, but overly optimistic. But I think her being more established might help things. I think,
sure.
yeah, I think she's, yeah, no, she's gotten a bit more familiar with how everything works, and so I don't know. We certainly we will have a very clear line of communication with the law office from the very beginning, and make sure that we don't do anything more than we have to sort of make sure that, because that was like the big issue that they seemed to think was kind of took this off the rails, that the legislation wasn't written by them. And I think I don't know. I don't think it needed to be as big of an. There were ways of resolving it much better than they were, but I don't know.
I
And in light of the fact that the alder persons aren't here, you know, in regards to the fee thing, we should just wrap that into the whole thing and forget about it for now.
Well, let's just, you know, we can still learn as much as we can about the fees, the connection fees and tap fees, and, you know, continue to think about it. And once we get a discussion with the aldermen, see if they're interested in carrying anything forward now, or should we just wait and do the whole thing at a later time?
I think we start maybe working on it, massaging it, but, you know, working with Eric's stuff, but not put
not
any-
invest
yeah.
not invest too much in it until we are firmly asked to do so by the council, the aldermen who might want to do it.
Well, we have to do that because they would do it, but I'm also thinking, Nancy, we wait and kind of come on at the beginning of next year after the comp plan's out there, because that is
Well, that's true too.
told to do. We did it, and now we're coming back because we have a mission and we have to do what we were set up to do, you know? That's
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the consensus is that we just
Yeah,
wait till next year.
Mhm.
But I would say in the winter before next year, we can start having our ducks in a row, so that once the year starts, we're not, you know, spending the first 4 months of the year trying to get our legislation ready. You know, if we can be
So we need somebody
kinda
on the
ready.
committee. Right, but we need somebody on the committee to be the person that's writing this stuff.
I
Or
have to
work
tell
with
you,
the
my dog
Office of
is
Law to
sitting
do it.
here.
Right, but
Well,
there
we have
needs to
give
be a
them the
keeper.
ideas that they should incorporate
Right,
into whatever language they draft.
Right, yeah, I mean, somebody on the committee should be keeping track of all the ideas and all the stuff.
Yeah, which I will do. I will keep that. Terry, you and I together can kind of
Sure.
put that together.
Okay. If that's okay with the committee, I'm more than willing to help you.
Okay. Because I do think you're right. We shouldn't do anything until after the comp plan is actually out there,
Mhm.
and which probably means next year. And in the interim, we should still be working on things to have the ideas ready, so that we're not, you know, so that we don't start doing it all at the beginning of the year and then have to wait 3 or 4 months until it's ready.
Mhm.
So but you got me thinking that one of the things we should do is start that kind of educating and strategy, getting people keep thinking about workforce housing and the importance of it and the density. Keep the topic alive somehow. I don't know how, but you know, I mean, Karen's out there tonight at the Democratic Club. We can think about different ways that we can bring people in on this. So when we do at the beginning of next year, go with the comp plan and we have that legislation ready to go, we have people on board to move it forward.
I think you're right.
So that's kind of something we need to work on together, the best strategy to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, to see
Yeah.
what avenues of
Right.
agreement we can find. Avenues of sponsorship or co-sponsorship that we can find.
Hey Nancy, I need to jump off now if it's okay, or got much more to do.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
'Cause
Bye,
I
Pat.
don't think,
see you.
I
Bye.
don't think we don't have anything to vote on anyway, so. Because now I don't think we have a quorum, do we?
We can postpone the stuff about 1901 West Street till the next meeting.
Okay, all right, why don't we do that? Okay. I think we've exhausted our discussion at the moment of,
Right,
The
since the
app-
older person's not here, we might as well
Right.
just adjourn.
I think that's probably right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Oh, we don't have any. Rich is still there.
I second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The meeting of the commission is